Have you ever been so far from help that screaming felt pointless? Not just quiet, but swallowed. Swallowed by ancient woods that don't care if you make it out. By hills that carry something deeper than folklore. These stories are not campfire, tales told for thrill. These are confessions. Fragments of truth dug out from Appalachia's darkest corners, whispered from the mouths of people who should have never gone there. People like you. Tonight we descend into the places maps forget, where cell signals vanish and where something else waits, silent, patient, and always watching. In today's episode, I'm sharing 8 true disturbing stories about Appalachian camping encounters that end in terror. You'll hear about one woman who found a surgically clean deer carcass surrounded by carved stones, and another who was offered shelter by a family who hadn't aged in decades and weren't entirely human. So, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Now let's get into it. Story 1. The Shiverin' Valley. My name is Seth. I'm a mechanic out of Kentucky, work mostly on long-haul rigs and farm equipment. Every October I take a solo camping trip. It's how I reset. No phones, no traffic, just me and nature. I've done this since I was 23. I'm 37 now. Last year I picked a spot near the Smoky Mountains. It was called Valley 9 on the old hiking map I found at a flea market. No one I talked to had ever heard of it, and that made it perfect. Quiet. Real quiet. I took my old Jeep, packed light, and drove for hours. The road turned to gravel, then dirt, then barely even that. About 5 miles in, my GPS froze. Then, dead. Signal gone. Nothing but green and rock all around me. Half an hour later, the Jeep gave out. Just died. I checked everything. Fuel, battery, lines. Nothing made sense. It was like something inside chose to quit. That's when I saw the old man on the ridge. He was leaning on a rusted walking stick, staring at me without moving. I waved. He didn't, just turned and walked off. I should have left then, but I was stubborn. I walked a few miles until I reached a clearing. It was too perfect. A fire pit made of stones arranged like a wheel, a wooden bench that hadn't rotted, and a cabin that looked recently swept, like someone was expecting me. Inside, the floorboards didn't creak. The furniture had no dust. The air smelled like fresh pine. I felt like I was in a stage set. Something not lived in, just prepared. That night I heard it whispering, not words, just the rhythm of speech circling the cabin. I got up, flashlight in hand, nothing, no footprints, just that feeling of being watched. When I shut the door, I swear, I saw someone behind the tree line, just far enough not to see their face. Next morning, I found the Jeep parked neatly outside the cabin. No sign anyone had touched it. Battery reconnected, keys in the ignition. I got in and drove. Didn't stop until I hit a gas station with signal. When I looked back on the map, Valley 9 wasn't there. It never was. But later I searched the name in local forums. Found one result. A 1978 incident report. 3 hikers vanished near an unlisted valley after reporting strange voices in a pristine cabin. Only their camp stove was found, still warm days later. I haven't gone back into the woods since. Story 2. The Signal from Nowhere. My name's Elena, and I work as a telecommunications contractor. I install and inspect signal towers across rural counties, and my territory stretches deep into the Appalachian Range. It's mostly solitary work, long drives, dusty service roads, and climbing metal spires while coyotes bark in the distance. I've done it for years. But last May, something changed. I was assigned a routine signal loss check near a mountain known locally as Ravens Peak, just past a faded town called Marble Hollow. Officially, the mountain's tower hadn't sent out a ping in 3 weeks. That usually means something physical: storm damage, loose wiring, maybe lightning. The dirt road leading up was washed out, so I had to hike the last 2 miles. No big deal. But right away something felt wrong. The birds stopped chirping as I passed the second ridge, not gradually, just stopped. I chalked it up to altitude. The tower stood intact. No storm damage. The base was solid, the panel closed. But my equipment registered something strange. A low-frequency signal was still being emitted, just not one my company recognized. It wasn't ours, not commercial, not military. I scanned for interference. That's when I saw it. Near the tree line, a circle of stones had been cleared and laid deliberately in a spiral. In the center was a small, black metal box, like a radio transmitter but older, handmade. On it, etched into the metal, was a single word in uppercase: listen. I shouldn't have touched it, but I did. The moment I picked it up, my headset cracked with static. Then a voice, male, raspy, slow, spoke a word I didn't understand. It wasn't in English, but I felt it, like something inside me clenched. I dropped the device. The static stopped. I turned to leave, only to find my climbing rig, my entire pack, laid out neatly on the path behind me. I hadn't placed it there. It had been at the base of the tower. My clipboard had a new note scribbled, in red pencil: "You're not alone." I ran. I made it back to my truck, locked the doors, and sped downhill. But when I reached the base, my GPS showed me still at the summit. For 10 full minutes, I kept driving downhill. But the location pin never moved, as if the mountain wasn't letting me leave. Eventually, after what felt like an hour, the signal snapped back. Everything returned to normal. I checked my odometer later. I'd driven over 12 miles, on a trail that should have only been 4. I reported the equipment issue to my supervisor. They said the tower was decommissioned years ago. The maintenance request I received had no paper trail. It never existed. 2 weeks later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small black metal box, just like the one on the mountain. It was still warm. Story 3. The Hollow Family. My name is Eric, and I'm a traveling nurse, mostly rural contracts. I go where I'm needed, usually hospice care or post-op home visits. It pays well, but the real draw is the solitude. I like the quiet between patients, the endless roads and empty hills. I've never been much of a people person. Last autumn, I picked up a 2-week contract for an elderly patient in a small Appalachian town I'd never heard of, Cedar Hollow. It wasn't on any map. The agency said it was nestled between 2 logging towns, and that someone from the family would meet me on the main road and guide me in. That should have been the first red flag. I was supposed to meet the family near a closed ranger station. I arrived around 6 p.m., right as the sun dipped below the trees. No signal, GPS frozen. A storm had passed through and the road was muddy and slick. My car's check engine light came on for the first time in years. Then the engine died. Just like that. I was trying to decide whether to walk or wait when headlights appeared behind me. An old pickup pulled up. A man stepped out, mid-40s, clean cut, pale like he'd never seen sunlight. Behind him sat a woman and a child, both staring, straight ahead. The man smiled, but his teeth didn't show. "You must be the nurse," he said. "We've been expecting you." I got in their truck. Something in me resisted, but the alternative was staying alone in the woods. The ride was silent. The road narrowed until it was little more than 2 tire tracks through wet grass. Then we reached it, a farmhouse that looked preserved from another era. Not decrepit, just untouched. Too untouched. Inside, everything was spotless. Glass cabinets gleamed. The fireplace was warm. The family sat in the living room, 5 of them, not including the driver. They all wore muted clothes, handmade by the look of it. No one blinked much. The grandmother I was meant to care for was upstairs, they said, resting. That night I heard them speaking in low voices behind my door, not whispering, chanting. I pressed my ear to the wood, and the words stopped instantly. The next morning they acted as if nothing had happened. I asked to see the patient. They said she was not ready. Later, I saw framed photographs on the wall. Black and white, then color, then recent. All the same faces. No aging, no changes. Just the same 7 family members, frozen in time. Tried to leave. My keys were gone, my phone was gone. I went to the attic and found a bed, laid out exactly like mine with my suitcase already in it. Everything duplicated. That night, I climbed out a 2nd-story window and ran. I didn't stop until I hit the road. A month later, I searched Cedar Hollow online. The only hit was an article from 1954, a missing family of 7, said to have vanished after a fire consumed their home. No remains were ever found. The photo with the article was the family who'd picked me up. Ori 4. The path that wasn't there. My name is Denise. I'm a forest biologist with the state's conservation department. I track wildlife patterns, particularly predator activity, bears, wolves, and recently, the reappearance of large cats in the Appalachians. The work is routine. Hike in, set up cameras, log scat or claw marks, hike out. It's clinical. There's not much room for mystery. Last fall, I was assigned to a heavily wooded stretch near the West Virginia border. No towns nearby, no campgrounds. Just thousands of acres of old, gnarled forest. Locals call the area Deadroot Hollow, but the official name is just Parcel 187. I'd never worked that deep before. Day 1, I parked at the ranger gate and hiked, 6 miles in. That's normal. The cameras were set, and I found tracks consistent with a cougar. All good. I made camp before dusk, drank instant coffee, and listened to the woods settle. Then something strange happened. I woke around 2 a.m. to a sound like metal scraping stone. Repetitive. Rhythmic. It came from deeper in the woods. I ignored it at first, thinking maybe a tree branch had caught on my gear. But it didn't stop. In the morning, about 30 yards from my tent, I found a new trail. It wasn't on my map. It wasn't visible yesterday. Freshly cleared, like someone had taken a machete to the underbrush. The dirt was unnaturally even. I radioed it in, but the comms were dead. No signal. I made a note to inform. The district laid later and marked the entrance with biodegradable tape. Curiosity got the better of me. I followed the trail for maybe 20 minutes. That's when I came upon the first symbol, a crude triangle, etched into a tree, upside down, with what looked like burn marks radiating from it. I turned to leave, and found a small stack of rocks on my pack, which I had dropped at the start of the trail. That wasn't there before. I hurried back, but the way I came was gone. The trail had shifted. I know how that sounds. But the marks were no longer where I left them. My compass spun in slow, lazy circles. I kept moving until I heard voices. Low, droning tones. Male and female. No language I recognized. I ducked behind a fallen log and waited. They passed in single file. 6 figures in dark robes, each carrying a bundle of sticks tied with red cloth. The one in front was dragging a deer carcass on a chain. It wasn't gutted. It wasn't bleeding. Just limp like it had been dead for days, but no decay. I stayed hidden for hours. When I finally made it back to my tent, it had been flattened. Not torn, not ransacked, just folded, like laundry. 3 days later, back at HQ, I filed my report. 2 days after that, I found something taped to my front door, a single stick bundle, red cloth. Inside the bundle was a strip of my tent fabric, burned around the edges. Story 5, The Cabin Exchange. My name is Marcus. I work in automotive restoration, mostly older American muscle cars. Business had been slow, and after my divorce, I just needed to get away. I found this off-grid cabin listed on a forum for our outdoorsmen, cheap rental, way out near the Appalachian Trail, miles from any highway. No phone signal, no distractions. Exactly what I was looking for. The listing said, perfect for isolation. I should have taken that more literally. I packed light, just a cooler, tools, and a rifle. The road turned to gravel, then to packed dirt, then barely a trail. My GPS froze as I hit the tree line. The air felt thick, like the woods had closed in behind me. When I finally reached the cabin, it looked better than expected. Freshly painted, stacked firewood, even a rocking chair that creaked in the wind. Too clean, honestly, like no one had ever actually lived in it. Inside, everything was arranged with clinical precision. Cutlery perfectly aligned, books placed by color, dust-free. The fridge had food in it, canned stew and preserved meats. Nothing perishable, no labels, no brands. That first night was quiet, too quiet. I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard movement outside. Not an animal. Steps, measured, heavy. I grabbed my rifle, peered out the window. No one. But the next morning, there were muddy boot prints on the porch, larger than mine. No return prints, just facing the door. I decided to leave. My truck wouldn't start, battery dead. I checked the cables, clean, no corrosion, no reason it should have failed. Then I saw it, tucked under my windshield wiper, a single key, old brass, with a small faded tag that read, "Use this one instead." I walked back to the cabin, and the front door, which I'd locked, was now slightly ajar. Inside, nothing had changed. Except for one thing, a second rocking chair had appeared across from the first. That night I slept with the rifle at my side. I tried the key. It didn't fit any lock I could find. But the next morning, the front door was locked from the outside. I had to climb out the window. I explored the woods nearby. That's when I found it. Another cabin, identical to mine. Same shape, same windows, same chair. Inside was a photo on the wall, me sitting on the porch. But the date at the bottom said 1996. I was born in 1987. I ran back to the original cabin. My rifle was gone, replaced with an older model. My cooler had food in it I didn't bring. Every object had shifted, aged slightly, weathered, as if the cabin had existed for decades, and I'd always been in it. Then, that night, the front door opened on its own, and someone stepped in. He looked exactly like me, older, eyes dull, like he hadn't seen the sun in years. He handed me the key and said, "It's your turn to watch the door." I didn't sleep. When I woke, I was alone. Again, I don't remember leaving, but I woke up in my apartment 3 days later, with the brass key in my hand. Story X. The Sinkhole Choir. My name is Leah. I'm a state geologist, mostly doing soil surveys and stability checks along highways. It's dull work, but I enjoy being out there. No desk, no traffic, just trees and dirt. I was assigned to check a series of minor landslides in a lesser-known section of the Appalachian Trail in Kentucky, an area marked for potential trail expansion. That section had a name the locals still used, Dry Maw Ridge. Supposedly because it hadn't seen a natural spring or runoff in over 30 years. Sounded harmless enough. I set out early. My maps were dated, but I had physical backups in a GPS. The path narrowed until there wasn't much of a trail all just a series of red ribbons tied to trees by another survey team a few years back. I found the first collapse after a 2-hour hike, a sinkhole about 12 feet across. Unremarkable. But what got me was the sound. A low hum. Faint, just barely within hearing range. At first I assumed it was my equipment, a field resonance sensor in my bag. But the sound wasn't mechanical. It fluctuated like a voice trying to sing but never quite settling on a note. I leaned into the hole to get a better look. The ground inside looked smooth, not natural at all, like it had been scooped out, not collapsed, carved. The humming grew louder the deeper I peered in. That's when I saw the rope ladder. It was made of old twine and bone-colored wood rungs, attached to the side of the hole, not by bolts or hooks but sewn into the dirt like it had grown there. I didn't go down. Instead, I flagged the spot and moved on. intending to file it back at base. I hiked another half-mile and made camp near a rock outcrop. My GPS flickered, then died. My compass spun. I wasn't worried. I'd done this before. I marked my position the old way, but that night, I heard them. Voices, dozens, singing in unison from the direction of the sinkhole. The same droning hum, but now layered. Words I couldn't make out. And every voice slightly off, like it didn't belong to a human throat. Too stretched. Too hollow. I stayed in my tent with a knife in my hand until morning. When I returned to the hole, the ladder was gone. But the ground had shifted. Now there were indentations, circular ones, like dozens of people had been kneeling around the edge. A pile of dirt had been left in the center. Atop it sat my field notebook, neatly closed. Inside, a page had been added. In handwriting that wasn't mine, it read, "Do not look down. Do not listen too long." I hiked out in 6 hours without stopping. When I reached my truck, I found the passenger door slightly ajar. Resting on the seat was a rock sample I didn't collect, marked with white paint in a spiral shape. I haven't gone back. But some nights when the world is quiet, I still hear the harmony start to build, just beyond the walls. Story 7. The Man with the Glass Eyes. My name is Aaron, and I work night shifts at a printing warehouse in Tennessee. I don't have a social life to speak of. My routine is simple: work, sleep, microwave meals. So when a buddy from my old job offered me the use of his grandfather's cabin in the Appalachians for a long weekend, I figured, why not? I wanted peace. Just a break from fluorescent lights and the thud of conveyor belts. The directions he gave were vague, handwritten, and mentioned a turnoff past an old gas station with the yellow pump. I didn't think much of it. The GPS stopped working once I hit gravel roads. It just froze, the signal blinking red. I kept following the directions until the road narrowed to little more than 2 tire tracks between walls of trees. I should have turned back, but I was too far in. Then my car died. No sputter, no warning, just silence. Lights dimmed, battery dead. When I popped the hood, every wire had been cleanly severed, not chewed, cut. I stood there for a while, waiting for the panic to kick in. It never came, just this heavy feeling, like the woods were holding their breath. That's when I saw the gas station in the distance. It hadn't been on the way in. A single yellow pump, and beside it, a man sitting on a stool, reading a paper that looked decades old. I approached him slowly. He didn't look up until I was standing right in front of him. His eyes weren't real. Glass. Like taxidermy, fixed, wide, and lifeless. His voice was thin, like something old and dry had learned to mimic a person. "You'll need to trade," he said, still staring straight ahead. "I need a phone," I told him. "No phones here," he replied, "but you can stay in the cabin just up the hill. The key's on the hook." I turned to look at the building behind him, gray, sagging, half sunk into the ground. But up the hill, there was a perfect little house. Red door, white porch, looked fresh built. Out of place. The key was already in my jacket pocket. I don't remember putting it there. Inside the cabin, everything was pristine. Fire crackling, stew simmering on the stove. No sign of anyone having entered, yet it felt lived in. The air was warm, scented like cinnamon and something else. Decay, faint but sharp. That night I heard something walking the perimeter. Heavy steps, slow, pausing every few feet. I turned off the lights and waited. At 3:17 a.m., a knock at the door. I didn't answer. Instead, I peeked through the curtain and saw the man from the gas station. Only now his eyes weren't glass. They were mine. I don't remember escaping, but I woke up on the floor of my apartment 2 days later. I was wearing clothes I don't own. And stitched into the sleeve was a small label, "Property of the Exchange." Story 8. The Path That Circles Back. My name is Ellen, and I'm a wildlife biologist. I work for a university, mainly studying deer population health and migration patterns through various Appalachian corridors. Last fall, I was assigned a solo trek into a dense section of the Blue Ridge Mountains to set up motion sensor cameras and collect scat samples. I've hiked alone dozens of times. I know how to read terrain, track signs, keep bearings. But this stretch felt off. The trail I followed wasn't marked on any of our maps, just a narrow dirt path cutting cleanly between the trees like it had been laid out with a ruler. The foliage was strange too. Everything around me was the same deep, sickly green, no variation, no birdsong, just wind that never touched the leaves. I should have turned around. About 5 miles in, I found the first anomaly, a circle of small, carved wooden figures arranged in perfect formation around a dead tree. Each figure was identical, smooth, faceless with antlers carved into the heads. At first I thought it was some kind of local art installation, but then I noticed that each figure was facing away from the center, as if something inside the circle was too terrible to look at. Took photos and made a note to return with a team. That night I made camp beside a shallow stream. My fire wouldn't stay lit, my GPS wouldn't connect. I told myself it was just signal interference, but around midnight I woke to the sound of chanting, faint, rhythmic, coming from the direction of the wooden circle. I didn't leave my tent. In the morning, my boot prints from the day before were gone, as if I'd never walked in at all. But there were new ones, barefoot, large. Circling my camp in uneven loops, I packed and left immediately. Only the trail didn't lead out. No matter how far I hiked, I always returned to the circle. Every single time. It became clear this trail didn't go anywhere. It was a loop, a trap. On the third day, I found something else, something I can barely explain. In a shallow gully laid out in a grid were camera traps identical to mine. Same model, same date range. But they were old, weathered, rusted, like they'd been there for years. When I opened one, there were photos still stored inside, grainy, black and white. Most showed the forest at night, but one image froze me. It was a photo of me, sleeping, from above. I tore down the camera and bolted. I don't remember how I got out. My memory cuts like a hard edit. One moment I was in the forest, heart pounding. Next I was staggering into the ranger station 6 miles outside the boundary, shoes soaked in mud, skin scratched raw. No one could explain how I'd gotten there. I still had the camera. We tried to recover the files, but every photo was gone, wiped clean, except one. A final frame that wasn't there before. It showed the forest, and in the center of the frame, a wooden figure, faceless, with antlers. And in its hand, my GPS. You wanted peace. You wanted solitude. But in these mountains, isolation is not freedom. It's an offering. 8 people went in. 8 came back, changed. Not all of them escaped, and some may still be wandering in circles, listening to the low hum just beneath the earth. If you made it this far, then you've survived tonight's journey into the dark corners of Appalachia. Tell me, which story stayed with you the longest? Which one made you hesitate? Before looking over your shoulder, leave a comment below. Like the video if the silence of the forest feels louder now. And of course, subscribe to Dr. Bonechill for more tales that stay with you long after the last word is spoken. Sleep well, if you can.